and welcome to the Retail Week, our look back at one of the biggest stories of the last 7 days. Plenty to choose from, but we're going to look at the turnaround story of Tesco, Britain's biggest grocer. The retailer unveiled full year figures this week. It was the Chas and Dave show. Thanks to Shore Capital's Clive Black for that joke, referring to Charles Wilson, the former Booker boss who's now running Tesco UK, and of course Dave Lewis, who has been steering Tesco back to health. There was a sense, I think, this week that maybe the corner has turned at Tesco. The bright sunlit uplands are nearing fast. What's your take, Brian? Have they turned the corner?
Yeah, very much so. I think there's very few negatives contained in that trading update. Sustained growth, profitability, moving in the right direction, regaining market share. So there's a lot to like about the story, and also spending a lot of time in stores as I do. You can genuinely sense there's really the employees have been really reinvigorated. The availability is back where it needs to be. Lots of innovation in private label, pricing sharpened up. So yeah, lots and lots of positives. The only negatives really, I think, the lackluster growth online, but with 50% market share, obviously the headroom for growth is quite limited.
Yeah, what was online, up about 5%?
Yeah, which is trailing the market, I think, and also trailing Ocado in particular.
Right.
And then the non-food, despite some great innovation again in private label through Fox and Ivy and Go Cook, non-food a bit of a drag on the overall business, but apart from that, it's thumbs up all round really.
Yeah, as you mentioned, you spend a lot of time in stores, and in fact all store types were firing on all cylinders, it looked like. The big shops, which some people a few years ago seemed to be consigning to the dustbin of history, and the express chain. Luke, what was your take? You were there speaking to Dave Lewis this week.
Yeah, it's obviously very upbeat and full of swagger when he was presenting to journalists in the city, and you can completely see why. And even away from the key numbers throughout his tenure, Dave Lewis has looked at things like NPS scores and their value perception, their quality perception. All three of those metrics have been absolutely gone through the roof over the past 3 years. And personally, it certainly feels like he rates those measures as highly as he does the profit number, which if you're a shareholder in Tesco, you must be looking at that and thinking, well, he has the best interest of this business and its customers at heart. And I genuinely get the impression that he has, and all of the work that he and his team have done over the past 3 or 4 years is really reaping rewards right now, to be honest.
Yeah, there's some real classics in there in the turnaround story. We mentioned earlier own brand, but that seems to me to be one of the things at the heart of the turnaround. Good product. What they've been doing.
100%. I mean, and Dave talked about all of the innovation that he's overseen since he's been at Tesco. That's everything from bringing in brand guarantee to give discounts at the till, changes to Club Card, bringing in Pay Plus where you can pay on your mobile. But he said the most significant investment Tesco has made in terms of innovation is farm brands.
Yeah,
bringing in that entry level fresh produce to compete with Aldi and Lidl on price. So that says everything really in terms of how he feels about own label and how that has progressed over the past 3 or 4 years. And I think he said 51% of all food Tesco sales is now own brand. I'm not sure how that compares to the rest of the big four, but that seems like a pretty chunky number from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time that own brand shares has breached that threshold. I think it's quite a significant one. Bearing in mind it used to be running at 20-30% a few years ago. There's been huge innovation. You mentioned farm brands, which I think are now running at $500 million in terms of sales, which is huge volume.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And that key battleground against the discounters, so produce and protein, they've brought in the so-called fake farm brands. That really has enabled them to win back shoppers, I think, because that is the sort of price points that people notice.
Yeah.
And I think you made a brilliant point earlier about the metrics that Dave Lewis is tracking. It's not just the stuff that we obsess about, the profits or the like-for-like sales. It's things like employee satisfaction and supplier satisfaction. I think that's been one of the biggest underlying reasons behind the recoveries, rather than treating suppliers like a cash point, which they were doing under the previous regime. There's a lot more collaboration, there's a lot more long-term planning, there's a lot more, real partnership, I think, with key suppliers, and that's really showing through in terms of the pricing, the promotions, and also things like availability as well.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. One of the things that we were talking about was Wicked Kitchen, an exclusive range of vegan food. And I had a look at the company they're working with, who I think are called Wicked Health, and they very much come across as a sort of brewdog type company, not the sort of business maybe that you would have expected to have been teaming up with Tesco a few years back. And I just wonder, have we seen a real cultural change alongside much better execution and this sort of thing? Has there been a change of culture that has helped Tesco get back on track?
Yeah, I get the sense there's a bit more innovation in the mix now. Obviously there was lots of innovation under previous management, but a lot of that was arguably misguided in terms of some of the joint ventures and acquisitions and things like the development of the Huddle, tablet, for example, which is great, but it's not going to sort of save the business. Whereas now innovation, I think, is a lot of it in private label, and I think that's to be applauded. And as you mentioned, Luke, as well, some innovation around Clubcard, around mobile payment. So yeah, there's lots going on there, and I think Tesco's really back on the front foot again. I think Dave Lewis's first challenge was just to rescue the business, and it was in an absolute dire state. And now it's absolutely stabilised operationally and financially, and they really are back on the front foot, innovating, really pushing the envelope in terms of lots of different aspects of the business. And I think you struggle to think of the criticism of the direction the business is heading.
Yeah. So the next part of the journey is obviously going to involve Booker, which is now being merged with Tesco. They seem to be excited about the possibilities during the week. They've done a lot of good work so far, and now with Booker, is the future so bright they've got to wear shades?
Well, forgive me for putting down the pom-poms for 30 seconds, but you look at everything that we've just talked about there and the good work that's been done over the past 3 or 4 years with Dave at the helm. The big concern for me now is the potential to take their eye off the ball, and all of this hard work, or some of it, could be undone. Similar criticism was levelled at Sainsbury's with Argos, over not last Christmas but the one before. Sort of took their eye off the ball with Taste the Difference, and that didn't really fall off a cliff, but it didn't hold up to the sales levels that had been expected in previous years. And my concern is that it's going to take a lot of manpower and time and effort to integrate these two businesses, and there is the potential to maybe let the hard work they have done fall by the wayside, potentially. I hope they don't. But also, you only have to look at Conviviality and the trouble that they had in trying to integrate Matthew Clark and Bibendum quickly and at minimal cost. I'm not going to say Tesco Booker's going to go bust, because clearly it's not, but that's a real eye-opener and a reminder as to the pitfalls that you could fall into when you're trying to integrate a business of that scale.
And I've always been slightly sceptical about the deal, because if you look at history, you've got Ahold in the USA, Walmart owning McLean, a big wholesaler, and also in the States, Iceland Booker, which we often overlook. The history of retailers integrating themselves with wholesalers isn't sort of rich with success. So I still have that slight scepticism, but I think Booker's a great business, both in terms of being a pure cash and carry, as well as overseeing the symbol grips. And I think there is actually some genuine synergy to be had in terms of buying, private label, that side of things. But what I desperately hope is they don't go for the sort of easy wins in terms of cost cutting or back office stuff. They do try and keep it as a separate entity with all of its strengths, and then just take the synergies where it makes sense behind the scenes, and not necessarily try and force through anything a bit too artificial. So I'm broadly positive. Again, there is another worry, which is Booker in its final set of results as an independent business called out chains like Byron and Carluccio's and Prezzo as its key customers in that part of the business, and all of whom are having quite significant trouble. So the out-of-home market is still growing and still strong. My worry is there's a lot of overcapacity in that sector within the fast casual restaurant sector in particular, and being exposed to that isn't necessarily going to be a walk in the park that we might have thought when the deal was first announced.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
It is. We will look forward with interest to see how it plays out. But that's probably a good place to draw things to a close for this week. Thank you very much for joining us. Please share your thoughts with us. Has Tesco turned the corner? Does Booker open new possibilities? You can comment on the website or engage with us on Twitter. Our handles are below. On the diary next week, we have results from JD Sports, and we should get a perspective on all the most interesting things going on internationally as the World Retail Congress takes place in Madrid. Thanks.